Thank you so much for being here. I've made it abundantly clear that I want to leave on time here this evening, and I'm not going to do that if I keep blathering like this. So we're going to talk about friendship and the greatest friend that we have. I thought about, by introductory remarks, taking you through the hymnal and talking about how powerful a metaphor this is for us. Jesus being our friend and Jeff beeping to it. And he left some out. There are plenty of others as well. The idea that Jesus is there for us in these moments. We all have friends. I certainly hope we all have friends, at least. People who serve a very important social function for us in our life here on earth. It is not good that man should be alone. We were told that in the very, very beginning. And that has application to marriage, obviously, but it also has broader application to fellowship in general. That's why we have local churches. I'm convinced of that. We could evangelize the world without local churches. Edifying brethren would be tough. Because we have local fellowships, we are able to build one another up in the most holy faith, providing that friendship, providing that agapeo love for one another, that we saw emulated in Jesus, that we saw pointed toward us in Jesus. And of course, Jesus is the greatest friend of all. And that's what we want to do here this evening by way of closing, talking about what he can and what he will do for us in his role as a friend. We're going to talk about 3 different roles, and then the lesson in the week will be yours. The first one I want to talk about is offering comfort. We sang about that in at least one of the songs that we just sang. Times are tough in this world sometimes. And if you're like me, one of the first things that you want to do when you get bad news is find somebody else and get them all depressed just like you're depressed, right? We feel the need to share our burden. Bearing one another's burdens is part of our life as Christians. Paul writes about that in Galatians chapter 6. Jesus, though, is able to provide that function as a friend in a way that you and I cannot possibly do for ourselves. Because Jesus has access to a source of joy that simply does not fit on planet Earth. And what an amazing kind of thing that is. Paul writes in Philippians chapter 4 and verse 4, rejoice in the Lord most of the time. Right? Or rejoice in the Lord when things are going on, you're going your way. I know that's not what he says. Rejoice in the Lord always. And in case you didn't get the message, again, I will say, rejoice. Why is it that we can rejoice in the Lord always? Well, without being just too on the nose with it, we can rejoice in the Lord always because we're always in the Lord. And the Lord is our source of joy. A joy that characterizes us at our core. And I trust that, well, I don't trust. I'll explain just to make sure that in case you don't. The difference between joy and happiness is a very important thing. Happiness, the root, I forget which language it is, Latin I think, that hap, where we get our word happen, happenstance, that sort of thing, has to do with things, events, what transpires on an hour-to-hour, day-to-day, year-to-year kind of basis. If good things happen, then you are happy. Tell me to repeat myself if I'm going too fast with this. The happiness that we have is connected to what happens in our life. Joy is not necessarily like that. Joy is a state of mind that transcends events. It does not have to do with whether you had a good day or a bad day in any given time. It is a status that you have at all times. Hence, rejoicing with the Lord always, because we're always with the Lord. And if it happens to be a bad day, or it happens to be a good day, or it happens to be an in-between kind of day, it really doesn't matter. Because we're connected to Jesus all the time. Jesus is a great example for us with regard to this. In Hebrews chapter 12, I'm going to read verses 1 and 2 for you here. If you are going to beat me there, you can read along with me. After having given us the roll call of faith, as we sometimes call it, in Hebrews chapter 11, he says, therefore, since we have such a large cloud of witnesses surrounding us, that's Abel and Noah and Enoch and all the rest of them, Let us lay aside every hindrance and the sin that so easily ensnares us, following their example, as it were. Let us run with endurance the race that lies before us, especially verse 2, keeping our eyes on Jesus, the pioneer and perfecter of our faith. For the joy that lay before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. I don't know how many times you were crucified this week, metaphorically or physically. Jesus was crucified for real. And he looked at the cross ahead of time and saw joy on the other side. You're wondering, how in the world could he do that? Well, this is how. Because it's not about whether he's having a good day or a bad day. It's about him seeing himself on a timeline, if you will. Part of a larger picture, a big plan that God was engaged in that required him to go to the cross. And so he went to the cross. He found joy in the cross, even though he despised the shame of it. He's not being unrealistic about this. He hated the cross as much as you or I would. But he embraced the cross. He found joy in the cross because he knew what it would mean for you and me. Have you ever done a favor for someone that maybe hurt a little bit? You helped them move, or something like that. That you didn't really enjoy, but you did it, and you were glad to do it because you have a relationship with this person. Jesus went to the cross for us. That's how big his concept of joy was. How invested he was with bringing joy not only to his own heart, but bringing joy to our heart as well. Peace works the same kind of way. Peace is usually defined as the absence of conflict. I trust that sometimes, at least, when the Bible talks about peace, that's not what it means. Because the fact of the matter is there's always conflict. There's always going to be an enemy. There's always going to be a struggle. There's always going to be a war somewhere or rumors of war. Jesus himself said that. Sometimes it's conflict just getting out of bed in the morning. I don't feel like I'm at peace in those kind of moments. Not in the conventional sense. But Jesus provides what Paul calls, in Philippians 4 verse 7, a peace that passes understanding, that defies comprehension. That ordinary people, if I may use that term, people out there in the world, people who don't know Jesus, do not understand. You go to the same internet websites, some of them anyway, as they do. You hear the same news items that they hear. You're acquainted with the world and its problems and its shortcomings and its difficulties and its pain and suffering and all the rest of that, just as much as the average person out there in the world. And they are absolutely distraught over it. They can't sleep at night, and you sleep just fine. Why is that? Because you don't care, and they do? I don't think that's it. I hope that's not it. It doesn't have to be that. It's because we realize that we are engaged in a different kind of process than they are. They see the only hope of peace, the only way they can really get a good night's sleep, is either a whole lot of drugs or no more war. Well, good luck with that. That would be a good luck with the war, that is, not the drugs. The idea of not having any more opportunity for war is silly. We understand that, no matter what our efforts are, no matter how much pull we have with the governor or the president or the United Nations or whatever. There's never going to be peace their way. There is always peace Jesus' way. Jesus gives us a sense of serenity, knowing that what's really going on in the world, the only conflict that really matters in the big picture, the only one, no exaggeration, the only one, the one between us and the devil, is already taken care of. The war has been fought. The war has been won. I'm on the winning side. That's why Paul and Silas can sing in a prison cell. Why? Because they had the best cell in the line? They got a better dinner than these other rascals did in the prison? No. Because they knew Jesus. because they were connected to a greater source of peace than their neighbors were. And you know what? What's kind of interesting, and I kind of wish that we had more information about this, the text says there that the other prisoners were listening to them. Now, I don't know exactly what that means or what it could mean practically other than this, because it was included in the text for a reason. I can only suspect that they were, in some small way at least, having an impact on their neighbors. And I suspect that you will have the same kind of impact when you sing in your prison cell. When you find peace, when the other people out there in the world would love to know peace and have looked everywhere for it, and it's nowhere to be found except Hal's got it, Brandon's got it, Hugh's got it, all these other people over here, they got it. Maybe you ought to check out what they got, because it's working, and what I'm doing isn't working. That's what Jesus can do for us and what Jesus can do through us for other people. Because we are connected through Jesus to a greater reality than what we see here on earth. That is a difficult concept for us to grasp because we don't understand eternity, one, and because we've never seen heaven, two. And so therefore, it is natural, and to a certain degree maybe inevitable, for us to see this world as reality and see heaven as the dream state. Jesus asks us to believe that that is not the case. In fact, it's the other way around. Have you ever woken up from a dream that was so real that you legitimately thought it had happened? I used to have flying dreams. Dreams where I could fly. And when I woke up, I could remember not only that I could fly, but it was ridiculously simple to fly. And I could imagine myself just... And for a moment, that was as real as it was. Now, thankfully, I realized the error of my ways before I got to the top of the skyscraper. And realized that I was in fact in a dream state and not in reality. It was really intense for about 2 seconds. And then 59 years brings me back to my senses, as it were. Well, which one is going to be real? Is it the 2 seconds that feels real? Or is it what you encounter for 59 years? The 59 years is the reality, right? But compare the 59 years to eternity and ask yourself which one is the dream state. This is less real than heaven. Heaven is the real place, the real reality. That's where our citizenship is. Philippians chapter 3, verse 20. I didn't mention my podcast, Citizens of Heaven. This is where I get the name for the podcast. And we spend the entire time every week talking about the difficulties, the challenges of living earthbound, where we do not belong, where we will not be forever, and where we will leave one of these days. In the meantime, I greatly fear that we as Christians, as citizens of heaven, forget about reality. And we embrace the here and now. It's very much like being in prison. We are imprisoned. We are trapped on planet Earth. And there's nothing we can do about it. And some of our brethren have decided their way of dealing with it, their day-to-day existence, what characterizes their life, is finding a way to make their pillow fluffier and their neighbors quieter and their jailer kinder and their view better and their books more interesting. They spend their entire life doing that. When in reality, what they ought to be doing is imagining the day when they will leave the prison and go home. That's where we belong. That's where we will be. And obsessing over our prison cell makes no sense at all. Especially since this prison cell, no matter what we do to it, no matter how many coats of paint we put on the walls or whatever, will still be a place of pain and suffering and death. It has been ever since the fall. It will continue to be so as long as the Lord tarries. Such things do not characterize our next life, our real home. Revelation talks about that. And perhaps in some way it's talking about a great spiritual reality we find in Jesus, that we're connected in that he really does wipe away our tears when we come to him in trusting and obedient faith, and we put him on in baptism, when we live the life that we were born to live. I don't doubt to a very large degree Revelation is talking about that, but I don't see any need to think that it has to only be talking about that. That there is not, in fact, a city with streets of gold, where all the saved of all the ages are waiting for us. I don't know exactly how figurative that city is, how many liberties with imagery John is taking, but I know this, I'm going to find out one day. And that'll be pretty impressive. That'll be good. When we have a friend who takes us back to reality and shows us we always have opportunity for joy, for peace, for grounding in what's truly real in this life, that kind of friend will do you a lot of good on a day-to-day basis. And only Jesus can offer it. Point number 2, he offers rebuke in error. Now, this is not our favorite aspect of our friends. This is not what we delight in so much. I have a friend who's always bossing me around. I have a friend who is always telling me when I'm wrong and how he's right after all. I have a friend who's always willing to point out the spinach in my teeth and the wrinkles in my clothes and all these kind of things. Yay me. Maybe not what gets us all excited. And it doesn't get us excited sometimes when Jesus does that. But we realize, if we're honest with ourselves, that sometimes the unpleasant aspects of friendship are exactly what we need, more than anything else. We don't need to be made to feel good about ourselves. You know, I'm going out on my first date, and I ask my roommate, how do I look? And he says, you look great, because he's trying to boost me up and encourage me and give me some self-confidence, when what I really need is some hair product, and a toothbrush and things like that. Doing me a favor by telling me what I want to hear is not necessarily a favor. A true friend is going to do better than that. Jesus offers us true friendship, including and particularly in a negative sense. We see this friend and our heart goes out to him. We realize that there are things that other people do that grieve Jesus. And we don't want to do that. We want to be a good friend. And so therefore, in our heart of hearts, we acknowledge that we want to know when we're falling short. The Psalm 19, the text that very famously talks about how God tells us about himself in creation and then turns around and tells us about himself in his written word. We sometimes quit before we get to the end of it, talking about how by his precepts, is your servant warned. One of the best things about the road signs Jesus is giving us for life are the road signs that tell us we're about to run off a cliff. You don't enjoy seeing that sign, but you're grateful that you got it. So you can do something about it. So maybe you won't run off a cliff. That's what Jesus is offering us to him, offering to us. And so when he gives us the warning, and maybe even grabs us by the neck and shakes us a little bit, that's not because he doesn't love us, it's because he does love us. The idea of discipline, the idea of training is a profound reality, one that I resort to many, many times, especially as a parent. It comes up a lot. It's a lot more fun to consider discipline as a parent than it was as a child, I'll tell you that. But as a child, we need it. And as God's children, we need it. Paul or whoever the author is, Paul or whoever, in Hebrews chapter 12, starting in verse number 7, We'll just read a small part of this. Endure suffering as discipline. God is dealing with you as sons. For what son is there that a father does not discipline? That verse is not as clear-cut, is not as rhetorical in the modern day as perhaps it was 2,000 years ago, and that's another story. But the idea that we're suffering, we're bleeding in this life, and it being for our good, we may struggle to accept that in the moment. But the writer here tells us by inspiration, that's what it is. If you're without discipline, which all receive, then you are illegitimate children and not sons, verse 8 says. Furthermore, we had human fathers discipline us, and we respected them. Shouldn't we even more submit to the Father of spirits and live? For they disciplined us for a short time based on what seemed good to them, but he does it for our benefit so that we can share his holiness. You know, my dad didn't always get it right. My dad's discipline was not always perfectly administered. Most of the time, that took the form of me getting away with stuff. You know, maybe he noticed, maybe he didn't notice. Sometimes he punished me when I didn't necessarily deserve the punishment. Not as many examples of that, but I guess I got lucky. When Jesus disciplines us, it always is right. It's never misguided. It's never selfish or short-sighted or any such thing. His truly are the wounds of a friend that Proverbs writes about, Proverbs 27 and verse 6. Faithful are the wounds of a friend. I have to believe that when Jesus beats me up, it's because if he hadn't beat me up, somebody else would have beat me up a whole lot worse. That takes faith sometimes. It takes humility. But if we understand how much Jesus loves us, then we should be able to come around to this reality. And because we do, because we connect to Jesus, because we believe in his love for us, when we receive that administration of discipline, when we are chastened, when things don't go our way, when God denies us something or however, whatever form it takes, that does not cause us to retreat from Jesus. It causes us to embrace Jesus. There is no fear, he says there. One of my very, very favorite parts of being a father, one that I probably will not experience again, was when terrible, terrible things happened to my kids. That sounds cruel. Hang with me. When I can be there and tell the children, tell the girls that they were wrong, and I can punish them because they need punishing, and I need to show them that I am the disciplinarian. I had such a relationship with my children where the very first thing that they would do, almost without exception, after being disciplined, was they gave me a hug. That's awesome. Because it tells me that they get it. They don't like it. Who would? But they get it. And I have a relationship with them that is not about whether I'm putting a smile or a frown on their face in the moment. It's not even fully thought out by your average 6-year-old or 7-year-old. Couldn't be thought out. But they know intuitively that however I interact with them, for good or for ill, it's because I love them. You want to build a brat? You want to build indifference? You want to build resentment? Ignore your child. That'll do the job. It's not the discipline. It's ignoring them. It's pretending like you don't care, or maybe even not caring at all. Knowing that Jesus cares enough to chasten us should ultimately build our faith rather than destroying our faith. It doesn't always work that way, unfortunately. Some people quit. But through this process, we find out what we are really made of. Paul writes in Romans chapter 8, verse 14 through 16, about how those ones who are being led by the Spirit of God, these are the sons of God. These are the children of God. This is how we know that we're the children of God, because the Spirit testifies with our spirit that we are the sons of God. What that means is the Spirit is guiding us in a certain direction. Jesus is saying, this is the path you need to walk, the path you must walk. And when you don't, there will be consequences, maybe short-term consequences for this. Maybe the church will administer it. Maybe life on planet Earth will administer it. Certainly in the end, we'll see it in judgment. If we take that judgment, that chastening, and use it to put us back on course and live as the Spirit requires us to live, then we line up again. God's children follow the Word. This fellow over here is following the Word. That means he's a child of God. That's oversimplified, obviously. But that's it at its core. When I am able to turn to the Lord, to His Word, whether it's good news or bad news that takes me there, that shows me that this process is working in me. And I'm becoming more like Jesus Himself, more like Jesus wants me to be. Now let me give you one more. Sometimes something's going on in your life, and you feel like, I need a friend right now more than I ever needed a friend. And it's not because you have a blowout on the road and you need somebody to come and change your tire. It's not because you're out of money and you need somebody to come and give you, $100 or whatever it happens to be. It's not anything that can be fixed. That's the bad part. What makes it so horrible is nothing is going to happen. You're going to stay exactly where you are. And you still reach out to a friend. Not because you think the friend can or will fix it, but because you need a friend. You need someone to be there for you, to give you a shoulder to cry on, to give you encouraging words, point you toward a bigger reality. That's what Jesus will do for us. When we encounter circumstances in this life that are just what they are, we would love for Jesus to come and fix it, and sometimes He does. But I don't think prayer is supposed to be some kind of shopping list that Jesus lets us give God so He'll come around and do whatever we're telling Him to do right quick. Prayer is bigger than that. I have taken to saying it this way. I believe the main purpose of prayer is to turn us into people who pray. By emphasizing prayer in our life, we become people who trust in Jesus, who intuitively, in these moments, whether Jesus is going to help or not, whether the circumstance is going to change or not, we know the right thing to do is pray about it. That connects us to what Ephesians 1 verse 18 calls the hope of our calling. How many things do you hope for? I'm sure there are any number of things that you're hoping for. You come to Jesus because of one hope. The hope of your calling. You believe that you will escape this life and go to something better. Jesus promised us that. He who loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. This is the grand bargain that Jesus strikes with us. If you will believe in me enough to give me the life that you have right now, give it completely and utterly with no reservations. You give that to me, I will give you another life. A better life. An ideal life. An eternal life. That you can't see right now. You just got to trust me on this. You got to have faith. Only the called, those ones who are called by the gospel, 2 Thessalonians 2 verse 14 says, those ones who hear the gospel call and say, yes, Lord, I'm coming, like in Isaiah chapter 6. Who's going to go? And this young priest says, here am I, Lord, send me. We respond to the call. And because of that, we have this hope, the hope of glory it's called, in Colossians chapter 1 and verse number 27. The hope that we will escape the drudgery and the pain and the suffering and the indignity and the ugliness that so characterizes this life on its best days. And we will enter into a hope that is glorious. John gives us a little taste of it in 1 John chapter 3, verses 1 through 3, talking about knowing Jesus properly and being as he is. We're going to see him as he is because we'll be like him. I don't know what that means. I'd love to know what that means. One of these days I will. At least it means this, that the struggle, the pain, the inadequacy that we wrestle with all the time in this life is not going to be ours in the next life. The work that is going on in us, making us over into the image of Jesus, is going to be completed on that day. We will be fully like him, whatever God means by that. It's going to be better than anything you've ever known, though. We have that confidence. Ephesians chapter 4, verse 4, you probably saw this coming already. The one hope. There are 7 unities that are given to us in Ephesians 4, verses 4 through 6. 7 different ways in which the gospel of Jesus Christ gives us a single thing that nobody else has. Things like it, sort of, kind of like it, are had by people out there in the world. But there's only one real God. There's only one real Lord. There's only one real hope. The idea that we will enter into that eternal salvation of our souls. We began this evening by reading from 1 Peter chapter 1, and verse number 3. Look at what Peter says here. Blessed be the God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ, because of his great mercy he has given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead. If God can raise Jesus from the dead, he can do anything. That's why it's so important, so critical that we accept the resurrection. Nothing else makes any sense if we don't believe in the resurrection. We're given a living hope through the resurrection, and verse number 4, into an inheritance, notice this, that is imperishable, undefiled, unfading, kept in heaven for you. Have you ever had something that was so valuable that you just could not bear the thought of losing it? Maybe a family heirloom, maybe a trust fund, maybe your house, whatever. And you are aware, because of the vagaries of this life, no matter how many insurance policies you buy, no matter how many fences you build, stuff happens. It's not as safe as you want it to be. It never will be. I used to sell insurance. And for a very brief time. Didn't care for it much. One of the reasons why is because people who cared about me, people who trusted me, would come to me and say, okay, I want to make an investment with you, but I want an investment that has zero risk. I don't sell that. I can sell you things that depend on factors that are universally accepted as being stable. Treasury bonds or something like that. That I can pretty much guarantee, pretty much. But I'm not allowed by law to tell you that it's without risk. Because it isn't without risk. Governments fall. Ours hadn't yet, but one of these days it will. This hope that we're given here is imperishable. Cannot possibly perish. Undefiled. Cannot possibly be spoiled. It is unfading. It is kept in heaven for you. Nobody robs God in his lockbox. And that's where my soul is. My future is secured with God. You're being guarded, verse number 5 says. You're getting a sense of security at this point, right? How many times do we have to be told this? Peter's big on repeating himself, by the way. If you read 1 and 2 Peter, Peter repeats himself a lot. Well, he's doing it here with effect. You are being guarded by God's power through faith for a salvation that is ready to be revealed in the last time. It's ready. He just hadn't revealed it yet. You rejoice in this, even though now for a short time, if necessary, you suffer grief in various trials, so that the proven character of your faith, more valuable than gold, which is, though perishable, is refined by fire, may result in praise, glory, and honor at the revelation of Jesus Christ. I don't know how many of you have seen metal being refined. It's a rather violent process. You got ore, gold ore, silver ore, whatever. It's pulled out of the mountain, and it's put in a gigantic fire, something that is just hotter than you can possibly imagine. The Bible talks in Daniel chapter 3 about a furnace that was so hot that it killed the people who opened the door to the furnace. That's not an exaggeration. It happens. The stuff goes into this fire, and like 80% of it, 90% of it, or it gets turned into smoke. Disappears. And on the other end of this horrible, horrible process, bars of gold come out. Bars of silver come out. Before it was worthless. It was conceptual. It wasn't real. It certainly didn't look like gold. Now it does. At the end of a horrible, painful process. That's what God does to his people. He's done it over and over and over again. He did it in Noah's day. He did it in the day of the judges. He did it in Isaiah's day. He did it in Jesus' day. He's doing it now. Is he going to stop anytime soon? Maybe, because it's getting hot in here. No, he's not. This is the way it works. But the more you submit to Jesus, the more willing you are to allow this process to work on you and in you and through you, the purer you get. And ultimately you are refined, where there's nothing left in you but Jesus. What an amazing concept that is. You say, well, can he hurry up because I'm getting pretty beat up over here? Well, no. The bottom line is no, we can't hurry it up. It will last every day of your life. And then one day, one might say mercifully, your trials are going to be over. And you'll come out the other side. And on the other side, you'll be pure. You'll be fit for heavenly things. The hope that God has for you is too big for this world. He can't do everything for you that he wants to do for you right now. Jesus is connecting you to the greater purpose. If you saw this slide at the first and thought, I'm going to explain to you why your parents died, I'm going to explain to you why your dog got hit by a car, I'm going to explain to you why your boss is so mean or whatever. I can't do that. I don't know you. If I did know you, I probably still couldn't tell you. What I am telling you is this. Jesus is with you in these moments. He is with you in the fire. In fact, it's kind of described that way in Daniel chapter 3. There's this one in there with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego that looks like a son of man. Exactly what that means, I couldn't tell you. At least it means this, that they weren't as alone as perhaps they thought they were. God is with them. And God is with you. Jesus is with you. Your friend will not abandon you in these moments. Paul talks about his friends, so-called friends, at the end of 2 Timothy. Some of them quit him because their faith failed, apparently. Some of them just left. And Paul appears to have had some hard feelings, at least in some situations, about that. But through it all, Jesus was with me. And I got out of it. That's the only friend you really need. I hope and pray that you have a lot of friends. The more, the better. And I'm not talking about Facebook friends either. I mean real friends. Human beings that you interact with, that are there for you, that love you, that lift you up, that give you the things that you need. But all of them together can't do what Jesus does. And thank God Jesus is our friend. And that he will be with us in these times, good times and bad times. Helping us stay on course, helping us realize what's actually going on in bigger pictures, bringing us to a greater reality, ultimately shepherding us into the greater reality if we are found faithful. That's what this friend is going to do for us. What I'm going to do for you is stop. And thank you once again for a tremendous week. And urge you, if you have not done so already, to avail yourself of this friend, the one who stands at the door and knocks. In Revelation 3, verse 20. He's knocking there in particular, by the way, for Christians who are not doing as they ought, people who are not especially grateful for what Jesus is doing. The same thing happens, though, for those who have not accepted him at all. If you're not right with God, if in some way Jesus has not reached you with his friendship, with his love, with his sacrifice, The problem's not on his end. I promise you that. It's on your end. Doesn't have to be that way. Why don't you accept Jesus Christ today? Why don't you put him on in baptism? Because you know that he is the way, the truth, and the life. He is the one who's going to take you out of this life and take you to the next. Whatever we can do to help you reach out for heaven, reach out for the Lord, please respond at this time while we stand and sing.